Good evening and welcome to today's episode of Love Engineering Live, where I'm talking to Renee Catt, the divorce go-to girl that is hiding out in, I would say, sunny Australia, but it's Melbourne and it's raining. Hey ho, that's life, and it's not much better in England. It's just dark and I can't see. So, Renee, how did you get to be the divorce go-to girl? Is it through personal experience or just through studying, or what's that all about?
Well, first of all, Alan, thank you for having me here. Yes, and I'm going to say good morning because it's 11 o'clock down under, and I'm really thrilled to be here and having this chat with you today. So it's an interesting question because people go, the divorce go-to girl, what is that all about? And my journey did start out 9 years ago when my marriage ended and I was riddled with anxiety and depression and looked rather different than I do now. I was just a shadow of the former, even the version I was when I was married. I just didn't even recognize who I was in the mirror. And back then I was running my own travel business from home and had two little kids who were 3 and 4 at the time. And it was actually through a business course I was doing for the travel business to launch Suddenly Single Holidays, which was my divorce holiday and retreat idea. And then someone said to me, just light up every time you talk about helping women. And mostly back then it was women through a divorce because, well, I'm clearly a woman. And she said, just, you light up when you talk about it. Just go do that. Be the divorce go-to girl, because when you're studying entrepreneurship, it's like you want to be the go-to person in the industry. And so that's how then I went, oh, okay, cool. So it was like somebody had given me permission to follow my heart and my passion, because people were asking me, didn't you just get divorced? Like, you look amazing. What did you do? And so it sort of just became from sharing advice and tips then, and they're just coming back to me going, oh, that really worked and I feel so much better. Thank you. And then I went, okay, well, I'm going to take this more seriously and study some coaching and some therapy. And, 9 years later, and I've studied my little butt off. And it's now, I got out of the travel industry 5 years ago and been doing this, helping people through their divorce for the last 7 years. So that's it in the nutshell.
So is it all sort of couples that are in that mess that are looking to get divorced and you make the divorce easier, or do you also work with couples to help them rebuild and make what they had before better?
Yes, so I do sit in a very interesting space of relationships, I guess, because a lot of the people, when I did the whole coaching people beyond their breakup and getting them back into life as the divorce go-to girl brand, then I actually studied family law, so mediation. I'm sure you have something similar to that in the UK and around the world, that instead of using the lawyers to battle out, you have one person helping you navigate it. And after my high conflict divorce and representing myself in court, when I finally did get some legal help, they said to us, why don't you study this? Because I was like, God, people, if you could only do your separation differently, it would save you this heartache and turmoil. Yeah. And this emotional stress and financial stress on the family and ultimately their kids. So then I studied family law and mediation to help the couples do it differently. And then when we were working through some sessions and I was doing the intakes with the couples, I realized, and when I asked them, you sure it's over? And they're like, no, but we don't know what to do. And I went, oh, okay, well, guess what? You can actually repair and you can make it better. So I guess I'm in that real crossroads path of, do you stay, do you go, and how do you then, make it work? So yeah, it's not just the divorce itself, but it's everything across that space.
Yeah, because I'm not sure about Australia, but certainly in the UK, divorce is going up and up and up and up. And it still has this real nasty, smelly stigma to it, as if divorce is failure in some kind of way. And when I went through mine, I certainly felt that way, especially with the male conditioning that we get, that the man is the man of the household, if you like, the captain of the ship, and the captain goes down with the ship. which is one of the reasons so many men stay in relationships that they really shouldn't be in. But for me, looking back, although the wrapping paper wasn't particularly pleasant, it was one hell of a gift inside, because I got to set myself free. I get to, and my kids come from, as they've actually grown up with mum and dad being separated, they haven't got that comparison. But at the same time, they haven't grown up with mum and dad being at each other's throats on a regular basis. It's like possibly 10 times in 10 years or something. So it's a lot better for them, even though, yeah, there is still that part of them that wants mum and dad to be together.
Yeah.
It's not, they understand that it is better that we're not.
Yeah, I guess people used to say that to me too. Oh, you're just putting this, glorified look on divorce. And I went, well, so what if I am? Because why should you stay unhappy after your divorce? No one says that you have to be miserable because you get divorced. And you're absolutely right that the shame and the failure and feeling guilty or whatever it is, the fears that you go through, the anger, the denial, the bargaining, all that stuff before it even happens. But having to admit it to yourself and say it out loud is the first challenge. But yeah, why we don't, staying in a toxic, abusive relationship that's making you unhappily and mentally and emotionally unwell is absolutely never a good idea.
Yeah.
And I see it time and time again, people stay far too long and they're literally traumatized by it because they have literally been in a coercive, controlling relationship where they've actually become codependent anyway. So nobody wants that. You want to be able to get out and find your happy again, like clearly we have. And you hit the nail on the head. Like, I can't imagine doing the work I do now or being the woman I am now had I stayed married. And I love my life. Like the journey it's taken on, like I've absolutely decided to find the gift and the opportunity in it from the get-go. Well, I'm not going to say from the get-go, probably like about fairly early on though, because I was working with a coach. I was really lucky to have that support. It's like, why does it have to be that typical taboo, this single mum sort of syndrome, I'm going to call it, because a lot of people, it does become that you take on all these limiting beliefs around financial struggle, you're not going to be able to work properly, no one's going to want you with your baggage and all this stuff. So there's so much in that mind that you take on, and I'm just like, nah, not this one.
Yeah. And also an observation that I make on a regular basis is there are a lot of couples that leave it until they're feeling like they're going to kill each other before they reach out for help. Whereas when you look at other areas of the world, as you just mentioned, you had a coach going through your divorce. And if you want to improve your tennis game, you get a coach that specializes in playing tennis. You don't go down the golf club and say, can you teach me how to play tennis? Or an Aussie rules coach to teach you how to play soccer.
Yeah.
But get a coach because they're outside of the picture. They can see the little differences that you could make them, and it can totally change a trajectory. Instead of being in that place 3 or 4 years down the line when you were about to kill each other, you could be 3 or 4 years down the line with more love for each other than you've ever had before.
Yes. And I'm going to say, I'm going to put my hand up and say that was me. Like when the night I sort of said, there's the front door, not so politely as that, but you just at your wit's end because you actually just come from so much resentment and anger towards that person. And most of us are projecting our stuff onto them and blaming them for a lot of it. But we're not taught. And I say this to everybody. I said, did you graduate from relationship university? Did you get a degree from relationship high school, right, that says you're relationship ready? I sure didn't. And relationships are going to be your biggest, best personal development journey ever. So you're right. Getting a coach to help you to move forward is exactly what's needed, because even if you did get someone to help you in those early days, like I had a couple the other day who rang me and said, look, we don't want to get a divorce. We just need to fix up this communication stuff and get rid of some of the triggers. Can you help us? I'm like, yes, yay. And I got really excited because if more people went into therapy or coaching in those early days, then the divorce rates, I reckon, would drop dramatically.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, you need that third party who's not emotionally invested in you. And I say this to everybody, your friends are not your therapists. Your friends are not experts. Your family aren't either, because they're emotionally invested in you and they have opinions about you because they only want the best for you, but what they're going to say is not the best.
A lot of the time, very much so. You sometimes need that little bit of PhD. Sounds for proper, honest direction.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I've one or two interesting mentors over here. But I was going to say something, and it's completely gone. So hopefully it'll come back in a minute. It's one of the joys of not having a script. You don't always remember what you're going to say when you're going to say it.
I love that too.
Yeah, so what was it? I know it was important. Oh, well, never mind. It'll come back. If not, I'll drop it in the comments afterwards, and we'll answer it there.
Yeah, definitely. Any questions, like people, if they're watching now, can type them in the chat or whatever, or send them through, and happy to answer them.
That's what it was. How many times has anyone ever been to a wedding where the bride or the groom says, I'm so happy to marry this person, they're such a fucking arsehole? Never, right? We marry somebody we believe we can make a relationship with, but we lose sight of that person as the little disconnects come in. But it's only a little thing, so we'll ignore that. Then we'll ignore the next size up and ignore the next size up, but they all stack up and add up and add up, and all of a sudden, why can't you see me anymore? Why can't she see me? Why can't I see her?
Yeah. And then it's like, then all of a sudden it's like you're like that balloon, at a party, you blow it up and you blow it up and it gets bigger and you dust past it and the thing explodes.
Yeah.
And that's what we become like with our emotions, and that tank is just then so empty. We just lash out, total reactiveness, and say things from a place of fear and doubt, of just, I'm going to get back at you for hurting me, and all this stuff, that spiral goes on. And it happens all the time. And I hear it so often that balloon, at a party, you blow it up. Couples are saying, that when they have kids, right, that they put the kid first or the baby first, and then they forget about each other. They stop dating each other and just assume everything's fine.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's
that's
not.
one of the things that didn't help with my marriage is when we had kids, there was a big dividing wedge, because all of a sudden she got what she wanted and I was just the income provider, so to speak. And at the same time, because we've been struggling financially for quite a while, I had a full-time job and I had a part-time business outside of that, so I wasn't putting much time into the relationship either. So we got two big wedges dividing us. Plus, we didn't have one kid, we had two twins. So it's added complications as well. And my family were an hour's drive away. Hers were the opposite side of the planet. So there wasn't that support around either. Although I had a business coach at the time that was doing his best to help me with the relationship, it was still some very challenging times because we'd lost that connection with each other, if it was ever there. So I think possibly disappeared in about year 2.
Yes. Yeah, we all have those, similar journeys, I suppose. When you go on to do the deeper work to discover what happened and own your part in it, then you come out the other side, I suppose, like ourselves wanting to help other people, because you know as well that you don't learn this stuff in high school and you don't really need to learn it the hard way like some of us have.
Yeah.
And I think people too, when they start dating, oh, I'm looking for someone who's, you know, looks like this height-wise or has these interests in music, and, you know, that's all we need to do. And, you know, are we, you know, compatible in the bedroom as well? And that's pretty much what a lot of people are looking for. And again, people don't have those conversations around, well, what happens if we're financially stressed? What happens if one of us gets sick? What if we have trouble conceiving? What if we lose our job? You know, how are we going to deal with it? How are we going to have each other's back?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so much more about who lives inside the body than what the body is like.
Oh, way.
And in some ways, building a relationship is a little bit like building a business. If you got into a business and said, okay, we'll open our doors in 2 years' time and we'll invest, say, 50 to 100,000 pounds or dollars into opening the doors of the business, and then to celebrate, we're going to spend a few more thousand to go on holiday for a couple of weeks. You just think, hang on a minute, that's a crazy way of starting a business, but that's what people do with their marriages. And then there's no business team meetings going forward. It's just like guesswork, go with the flow because love's a romantic feeling. Yeah, love takes effort. It ain't always romantic. It takes work. You have to put them in brick by brick, and that honest, open communication between the two is a cement that holds it all together. So if that communication isn't there, even if the other stuff is, you got a problem.
Yeah, and a lot of people just go, well, you know, it's like your bank account, right? If you're going to go and invest something, well, you're always going to put money in, and you can't, that compounding effect, right?
Yeah.
But when are people treating their relationship like that? It's like, well, I want to take, and I've given, but I'm taking, and it's this, you know, emotional tug of war sometimes, like he did this, she did that. And I know that a lot of the time, especially this tends to be a trait I see more in women, where they'll hold on to, you know, stuff. And women, our memories are just like, we will remember when you did something like 7 years ago and it was the first Sunday in April or whatever, and the sun was coming down in this direction. It's just how sometimes we're wired, that we build up this list of stuff and it's all the negative stuff. And so we have this negative tank that just takes over. So it's like you're withdrawing too much rather than putting in. But I'm wondering, when do people ever do the opposite and just let it go? Because what I've found as well is that we'll hold on to something because it makes us right. That's, if I hold on to this and I feel this way, it means it actually happened, and though something will happen. And that's crazy because it affects, the only person it affects is you, not your partner. Most likely they've got no idea.
Yeah.
Until you throw it up in some heated argument and they're like, what?
That's when it does affect the partner, because he's like, what the is that all about? All I did was not quite get the sock into the washing basket. Is it really that much of a bigger deal?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's all the other shit underneath.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think, irrespective of gender, both sides do find it less easy to provide that non-judgmental, non-expecting emotional space for our partners to just vent their feelings and get it out without taking it personally.
Yeah, like it's so many times when you're asking people like, how do you resolve conflicts? I would say 95% of the people I've worked with go, we just would sleep, go to bed angry, and then we'd wake up and we'd just pretend it didn't sort of happen. And it's like, again, it's like that build up. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm just like going to come at you and unleash this beast of emotional rage that you sort of didn't see coming because you haven't dealt with it properly. And and I can tell you, like, even though I ended a 3-year relationship about 9 months ago now, but I knew in that one I was going to show up differently. And anytime I felt like holding back something, I was going to talk about it. And I could guarantee you every time we did speak about it, I would say, and other than towards the end, it did bring us closer together. Like there was no then holding on to stuff, no resentments were building because we had spoken about it. And it was just this different of perception, how things were taken. And it was just like grown-up conversations where you're just not taking things personally because it's just my perspective and his perspective.
Yeah, and I think the different operating systems don't help much either. It's like men have got the Android operating system and women have got the iPhone operating system, and different buttons do different things. So when a woman comes and just vents her emotions, because that's what she does, because she's a woman, it's what she needs to do to feel better. A man's natural thing is, she's got a problem, I need to fix this shit.
Yeah.
No, you need to shut up and listen. That's all she needs. And don't take it personally. It's not. It sounds it, but it's not. Let it go.
No, all the men need to say in that moment is, what do you need from me right now? And most likely she'll go, oh, nothing. I've just got my own answer. I'm sorted. I'm good. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
So that one tip, people, could save your actual marriage, by the way. Because we just like, what?
Yeah.
And sometimes, we think that you're this big, hairy version of us, right? Or our girlfriends, and you want to just hear our stuff as much. And I know that you don't, but sometimes we just need that from our partner, that you just sit there and nod your head and go, yeah, I've got you. But you do want to listen and say, yeah, and repeat some things back. Well, so you are showing you're listening, but that's it. Just show you're listening. And then what do you need from me? And voila, done.
Yeah. And sometimes when you are communicating with somebody that you love and they're, shall we say, a little animated, and it sounds and feels personal, sometimes it may be, but in your own head, if you start saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, it'll keep yourself grounded, keep yourself in your heart space, and it just kind of deflects all the stuff off. And she will also feel loved as well, or he will, depending on the dynamics of the relationship, as it's all different these days.
Yeah, because mostly, like, a woman is there wanting to feel safe with her man. And by doing that, you're actually holding space for her, so she is feeling safe to share. And that can be literally all that is needed in that moment.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I didn't do when I was married, because I didn't know what it was, didn't know how to do it. Because they never taught us any of that stuff at school.
No.
And I never saw it at home. Because in a way, my dad did kind of do that, because he just wouldn't fight anyway. Sometimes he'd just sit there, listen, nod, and say, yes, dear. Yeah, when I did that, it had a very different effect.
Oh, absolutely.
Because me and my dad have quite different personalities, and yeah, my mum and her were very different as well.
And that's just it, right? Like, we're not different communication styles, different problem solving styles. And it even goes back to, yes, what happened in childhood, like, because if that person had never felt safe to express themselves growing up, you don't know what trauma's been there, because most people haven't divulged their trauma history, even think that what's happened in their life has been traumatic. But especially if somebody's grown up in a toxic family environment where it was never safe to speak up, it was never safe to express your emotions, depends what beliefs that person's carrying about themselves and other people is what's going to show up in the conversation. So relationships are so multifaceted when it comes to looking at them, this person as a whole in front of you, but it's like, well, what happened as a child? What happened as a teenager? What was your family dynamic like? It goes back really quite in depth as to who they're showing up with now and what's their relationship history like. You might have an amazing relationship, but if you've got a history of, say, women cheating on you, then potentially there's a belief that all women are going to cheat. So you might even self-sabotage the relationship and not show up in conversations because, like, whatever, they're going to cheat anyway or leave me anyway. So what does it matter? So there's so many layers to all that and how people solve their problems, whether they're processing it or, some people like to have the conversation and sit and think about it and then come back 24 hours later and chat about it. That's just honoring that person and how do they need to process this conversation.
Yeah, it's about knowing your team, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, as I said, there's so much to learn in relationships.
Oh yeah, it's for anyone watching, this really is a trailer for a trilogy of movies. It's not the whole thing. We're just scratching the surface here and having a little bit of fun with it.
Yes, fun, absolutely, always.
Yeah.
And so you wanted to, I suppose, focus a bit on how to move on after a divorce, didn't you? We've sort of digressed a bit, but
it's all good. It's all good.
Did you want to chat about that now?
Yeah, I think men and women handle divorce and separation very, very differently. Some of which are down to the different operating systems. Because when a man can't fix something himself without getting help, it can feel like I failed. And you add that to the stigma of divorce, it definitely feels like you failed. And then you got to go and tell your friends and your family that you've separated or divorced or whatever. And then they express their feelings depending on how much they know, how much they don't. Some of it will be positive, some of it will be negative, and a lot of it will depend on the stuff that you've relayed to them in the past. Because I had a conversation with a guy recently where he's like, oh, my friends are telling me to this, my parents are telling me to do that. I don't know what to do. I says, well, what do you want to do? And what have you said to them in the past about your relationship? I've only told them about the bad stuff. Right. What about the good stuff? Let's start there, shall we? What's good about it? But, so we tend to not ask for advice for anyone and not ask for help, which really doesn't help us men. But whereas women will go and talk about it a hell of a lot more, especially the things they don't like about it.
And I think it's often the fear or the shame behind the actual act of asking for help that holds people back initially. That universal fear of judgment that most people have to some degree on some level. But what have you got to lose if you do ask for help? And then what have you got to gain when you do ask for help?
Yeah.
And, most of us, just like, when you want to go and get your car serviced and take it to the mechanic, we go to that expert. And there's no shame in going, I can't fix my car, I've run out of petrol or something, or I can't change the brakes. There's no shame in that. And it's just the same because even I have a coach and a therapist as well because I can't do for myself what I can do for others.
Yeah.
Any coach and therapist out there needs that.
Absolutely.
And it's healthy to have those check-ins. So taking your relationship in for a checkup, taking your mind and heart in for a checkup is always a good idea. And reaching out for help specifically, at that end, if you have decided that it's done, that is the critical time to ask, because what often happens for people is they go into a stress response of fight, flight, or freeze. all the stress hormones running around your body. You can't sleep. Your memory's not functioning because that part of the brain is actually shut down. Can't focus at work. All the internal chatter of, I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy. I didn't make this work. What about the kids? And then my finances? Like, it is a jumble of chatter. And you need to be able to process all this stuff. You're going to go through a grieving process as if somebody has died. The bargaining, the denial, the anger, the sadness, and acceptance. You're going to go through those emotions.
Yeah.
And most of us, again, aren't taught how to process them. What do they mean? And we're all thinking it's making us mean like, yes, we're a failure. Because you don't get married prepared to get divorced.
Exactly.
So, and everybody, I'm going to imagine, has pretty much felt that way on some level because of, the shame or that even saying the word divorce doesn't sometimes kind of, feel that good. And it's, what are people going to think of me now that I'm divorced, that I'm just going to, become a bit of a recluse and hide and keep it all into myself. But again, it's not the best idea. Everybody needs to get this stuff off their chest so they can function in life and not end up hating their former partners because they're taking it out on them as like punching bags in a way of, I'm going to hold money back. I'm going to hold the kids back. And it's just, it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah, not at all.
And the reality is, and this is what I've got a note to self, must finish my book this year, but the reality is when the whole idea of marriage was invented, like in the 400 whatever BCs, right? I'm just pulling years out of thin air here, but yeah, you understand what I mean. We are now and we were living back then till we were 40, probably, if we were lucky, right? So it would be normal that you could be with someone maybe for 10 years, maybe for 20 years. Wasn't that big of a deal. But now, we are marrying later anyway. And even if you are getting married in your 20s, the idea then is you're going to be with someone until death do you part. Remember, you say those in your vows, most people.
Yep.
That's like you're with someone for 80 years potentially. And our lifespan is 100, probably in time will be closer to 120. We are definitely living longer, healthier lives. Yeah. But the reality is 50% approximately of first marriages end in divorce. It's about 68% of second marriages end in divorce and 70-something of third marriages end in divorce. So there's a few reasons. We are not learning the lessons. We are jumping on too soon to another relationship and taking all that emotional baggage with us. And you will only attract the same sort of person of where you're at in that next relationship anyway.
Yeah.
And you'll learn more lessons if you haven't done the inner work. So, or is it as well that we are more likely to have 2 or 3 serious partners in this life because that's a reality of the 21st century?
Yeah, interestingly, you say about getting married when they're sort of 20, which there's nothing wrong with. But how many 20-year-olds are the same person when they're 25, 30, 45? We change, we grow, we evolve. It's part of life. But sometimes if we're in that, we've then got to change, evolve, and grow together. And that can bring complications. Like when I was 20, I had no clue what I wanted to do with life. I knew what I was doing in my career, which wasn't going very well. But who I was then is so different from who I am now. If I had have got married to my first girlfriend when I was 19, which part of me wanted to do, which scared the crap out of her because it only lasted 2 weeks. And looking back, I don't blame her. And if the journey I've been on, I wouldn't have been able to do in a relationship of any kind. And I don't think anyone would have stuck with me anyway. Plus, we look at our other halves or our partners like, I want you to be my life partner, possibly business partner. I want you to be my lover. I want you to be my rock of support. I want you to be my best friend. I want you to be my drinking buddy. I want you to be my fuck buddy. I want you to be this. And I want, there's like 10 different hats that we've got to wear at 10 different times and not upset the other and stay friends with their friends. Otherwise that causes complications, and them stay friends with our friends. Otherwise that causes complications. And doing that when you're 20 is hard enough, but keeping doing that for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, that's a big ask.
It is, and I think even more so these days, and I know we're talking about this a little bit off camera, but I know a lot of people these days are having open relationships because they don't really want to get a divorce and they've got kids. So, well, why don't we try this?
Yeah.
And like even years ago when someone was mentioning that, oh, I don't believe in this whole idea of marriage and being monogamous. And when I was at, I was getting out into the online dating scene, probably about 6 years ago now. And I met up with the guy and he said, oh, did you see my profile? I'm polyamorous. I went, what? Nah, what does that even mean? And he goes, I just don't believe in being with one person. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I still do. And I still believe in the idea of marriage and that. But it's, everyone's just got different ideals now around what it means to be committed.
Yeah, and I think in some cultures, although it's mainly towards women, they will stone you to death for cheating. Yet people still do it. So it brings a question. Firstly, is cheating the cause of a relationship breakdown? Is it the effect of a relationship that's already breaking down? Or is it that we as human beings are not actually meant to be monogamous?
Yes, yes, and yes. I used to have the belief that the cheating was an exit strategy. That someone didn't have, I want to say, the guts or the courage to say, hey, I'm done. I want to call it, because that makes them, end it, I suppose. But then they realize if you get caught cheating, the other person ends it, so they're not as bad, is what I had from a lot of conversations with people over the years who have been cheating. And I mean, there's so many reasons why people do it, but yeah, again, it is what's your belief about being, who has that conversation, literally the conversation, because a conversation is very different from assuming because you get married that's what it's going to be. And you assume that I've said these vows and they're actually going to take them seriously. That's the fairy tale nonsense that people think, but we said this. And I said, that's just, you said that because that's what everybody says and you're supposed to say that. And that's just absolute BS, because they weren't your vows. That's what society says you're supposed to say. And society says, well, you've been going out for so long, maybe we need to get engaged and get married because that's what we should do. When most of the time, no, and I'm going to put my hand up. I never even really cared about getting married. Back in the day, I was having too much fun being single and partying, but I'd never really needed to have a boyfriend. And then just before we got engaged, I was going to call it because I was kind of over the relationship anyway. Oh my God, now I'm going to get married and okay, maybe this is what I want. So this is why I had to own my part, even though I did go into my marriage with wholehearted thinking it was going to be fine and that was just a moment. But I've heard so many people say exactly the same thing. They were so close to exiting and they didn't really even think that they needed to get married. So it's just, everyone's different, of course.
Yeah.
And you just have to stay true to you and your beliefs and what you want, and because you know what's best for you.
In theory, yeah. Sometimes we tell ourselves some very interesting stories.
That's
like,
true.
Before I got married, I was starting to get these feelings of, oh, is this right? I don't know. I spoke to my parents who said, don't worry about it. It's just cold feet. Everybody gets them. And besides, if it doesn't work out, divorce is cheaper than it used to be. Thanks for the support. And then one of my mates sort of said, well, look, are you aware that because she comes from another country, she could just be after that British passport? I said, well, yes. That's why within that time, I've got no interest in having kids. But we're also in this position where if we wanted to further the relationship, we either had to have this weekend here, that weekend there, that weekend, and have about, I don't know, 10 weekends a year together or something. Or for her to come over here on a fiance's visa, with which you've got to be married within, I think it was 3 months, which really doesn't give you much time to get to know each other. That during that time, you're really just getting to know each other's marketing department, not the product on the inside.
So yeah, definitely. We're all amazing.
Did I know better? Yeah. Did I listen to myself? No. Why? Partly because I'd already paid for all the wedding and all the other stuff, and I didn't want to be the one that says, well, actually, nah, cancel it, sod it.
And very rarely do we say, oh, intuition or instinct, you are wrong. We always, pretty much always, everyone will say, oh, I wish I'd listened to my intuition or my instinct.
I didn't even know what it was.
Exactly. And that's the thing, right? Like, I guess that little voice that sometimes, oh, what's that feeling? That's your warning sign, your internal warning sign. Hang on, something's like not right here. Tune in and suss it out. We're not taught that stuff either, because if we all were using our internal guidance system, that intuition and instinct, we would probably be choosing a lot better partners, and they wouldn't be choosing them from here, our head, making logical, like you did as well, and I did as well, because I'd relocated, from the city to a regional country town, and, we tick these boxes. But if we listen to our body, we know our body's telling us the answers all the time. And so is, the universe, the whisper, tap, slap, are you paying attention sort of thing. But again, all these lovely things we aren't taught beforehand.
Yeah, it's like what we are taught is how to be a good boy or a good girl and fit into society and do what you're supposed to do, and then everybody will like you or love you. Yeah, what a load of bollocks.
Yeah, that trying to fit in and trying to find that belonging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spent many years trying to fit into places I didn't fit, like trying to fit in with the computer geeks at school because I didn't really fit in with the Jack the Lads, and I didn't really fit in with anybody. But then later in life, actually, I was born to be different. I was born to be outstanding, not in-fitting.
I love that. Yeah.
So I have to say, I am outstanding in my field. Sometimes I go for a walk out there in the countryside, so why not? Don't know about any other type, but...
Oh, dear. Life, hey?
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't be dead for quids, right?
Well, there's a long time. There was a time ago when I would have gladly taken that choice, but I am so grateful now that I didn't.
And I think too that's for some people, like, as much as I can say it's amazing and, the life after and you can choose all this, like, the reality for some people is that it does feel like the end of the world, and they do feel that way. But what I want people to really understand is we just don't want life to really go on like it is right now. And people sometimes feel like it's going to be like that forever, and it won't be.
Yeah.
But you absolutely have to make a choice, and you are the only ones who have the power to make that choice to do something different about it. And and that's what I say. You're choosing. There's a new word. You choosing is your superpower. and to not let the pain and suffering of it take over. Don't become the emotion. Learn from the emotion. Your emotions are always trying to teach you something and show you something. And like I said before, I was suffering depression and anxiety. I was on really strong bloody medication, really freaking strong, because I was a mess. Mind you, taking it didn't even hardly work. But I got through it, and everybody else can too. And you just have to choose. And it's just focusing on that day and becoming really mindful and present, and I've just got to focus on today, because sometimes, you know, that initial ending, and I have seen it before with clients when I've sat in the room and helped them, like, this is the first time the other party is hearing, I'm calling it and I'm done. That other person is emotionally shattered and feels broken in that moment. But you don't need to become that. It doesn't need to take over. You have to process it so you can release the emotion. And you can in time, and not everyone's journey will be the same. But you've got to do the work, like meditation, mindfulness. They're the two best things you can do at the very beginning, or breath work, you know, to help you through that really muddled phase. But allow yourself to, like, I allowed myself, I call it a pity party. But the first week, I think I had, when I told people and made it official, I had people coming and staying at the house and helping cook and clean and helping with the kids and stuff, and the dogs we had at the time. And you need those hugs then. You need people to just sit and hold space for you so you can let it out.
Yeah. But
then there's got to come a time where you go, right, I'm done. I'm done feeling like that. I don't deserve to feel this way. It's absolutely not going to be helpful for you to stay that way any longer than it. I honestly believe a week is enough to process all that stuff. Sit there, take time off work, you know, get out of work for a week, take some holidays and just be. Because even if you feel like you're falling apart, you will come back together. And then it's just that nurturing yourself, you know. And I called it my pity party. I went off to the McLaren Vale, which is a wine region here in South Australia, and hung out with my dad and stepmom at the time. And I drank wine for 4 days, not 4 days straight, but, you know, and I just sometimes would just cry for no reason. Well, there's a good reason, but I would just sit there and just cry. And then I'd get a hug from my dad, and just, you know, things you can get through this. And you will smile again, you will laugh again. And it's like, I liken that moment to the Sex and the City, the first movie, when they're away and Carrie's wedding didn't happen, and then all of a sudden Charlotte posed herself because she'd had some water or whatever in Mexico, and then they're all laughing again, right? So you'll all have those moments. Oh, guys, if you haven't seen the movie, I don't know what to liken it to for you. Watch the movie, it's funny. Or watch back, what is it? Step Brothers, there's a funny movie. You watch that and you'll laugh. But you will laugh again and you will smile again. You've just got to want to.
Yeah. Yeah, that decision to move forward is the game changer, and getting that motive, that drive from within is half of the battle. For me, was November 2010 when the kids were five months old. I came home to an empty house.
Wow.
And initially I was like, what the is going on here? And part of the reason we separated is because she went, was because I found out that she'd been leaving the kids home alone, and I didn't take kindly to that. Like, they were about 3 months old at the time, stick them in baby swings, bugger off shopping, that kind of thing. And the neighbours are threatening to get social services involved. I said, look, let me talk to her first. If she agrees not to do it again, that's fine. If she does it again, get on the phone. So we had a little heated discussion over that one. And I was politely told, well, maybe not quite so politely, they're my kids, I'll raise them however I want. Not in this country, love. Not in this house. You leave them home alone, you're out. And so I came home to an empty house. That took some processing. It took a few weeks to find them. I didn't even know if they were still in the UK. And having spoke to the police, who just said, oh, you need legal advice, and pretty much put the phone down.
Yeah.
And solicitors were kind of expensive agony aunts, along with all the private investigators to find her and everything else. And I think it was late in 2011, my entire month's salary disappeared in 24 hours on legal fees and child maintenance. And I just like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I walked out of my job and said, it's like, I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm going to do my own business full time. I've got nothing to lose. So I did that, and my life kind of transformed. It started getting better. I was feeling better on myself. I had kind of purpose again. I had people appreciating me again. It was great. And then I got into another relationship. A little bit soon, possibly. It went great. And then this one weekend, that relationship ended. The guy I'd rented my house out to died in my house. His girlfriend was living there. The council didn't know about it. He hadn't paid their rent for her, and all sorts of stuff. I just crashed out. And then it's like, I've got an unplanned mortgage, a full-time business with a part-time income, and how the hell am I going to survive now? And it's like, I need to redecorate and rent the house out, because part of the deal was that he redecorated in exchange for a discount. 5.5 months into a 6-month contract, no decoration done, and he's dead. It's like, what do I do with this? Like, universe, what are you doing to me? And I was so close to selling everything I'd got left to get the money to buy a ticket out to Australia and New Zealand, just run away and start again.
Yeah.
And that I wanted that connection to Australia, because that's where I felt free, because I didn't have a job, I didn't have stress, I didn't have commitments, none of that. Just me kind of partying in different parts of the country, moving around. It's great. And I wanted to get back to feeling like that. So I put on a couple of CDs that I was gifted while I was in Tasmania. The first one is, there's a song on it that says, oh, you can take my money, but you can't take my rock and roll. It's like, yeah, I can relate to that one. What's on the other CD? And there's this song called Better Off. And it's like, is he better off now that his father is dead and his mother was never the mother she should have been? And it's like, is that bastard singing about my kids in the future? Damn. And it's like, I can't run away. I have got to be the dad that my kids need me to be. And it's like, I don't know how. I don't know how I'm going to pay for the coach that might teach me how, but you find a way. Step by step, day by day, build yourself back up. And actually, you find out in the future, when you look back, that you're 1,000 times better off than you ever were before. It's great.
Yeah.
You can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I love life.
Yeah.
Day same as anybody else. I just don't live in them.
Yeah, definitely. It's, and yeah, that's the reality, how we feel at the time, right? You do think that it's always going to be that way, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, I used a lot of mantras or found inspirational quotes at the time. You know, it's not about waiting for the storm to pass, but learning to dance in the rain.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I love dancing. And so I found, you know, my happy place in dancing and going out and dancing and listening to music that, you know, lifted my spirit. So you've got to find that positive that twist on it, because it doesn't, you can do it.
Yeah,
It's just,
dancing in the rain thing. I'm not much of a dancer, but I do get it, because when I was out in Oz and I was in Alice Springs one day and it started to rain. Of course, I'm from bloody rain, so it was rained everywhere I went. So, I was just having one of them days. I just want to fill a truck up with fuel and carry on. And the staff in the garage are all outside dancing in the rain. It's like, the fuck's up with you lot? I'm like, it hasn't rained here for 3 years. You'll have to wait. Would you like to dance? Well, yeah, why not?
and I think
my view of rain.
Initially, you might not have the inspiration or motivation to do it for yourself. And I do get that. And if you've got kids, you'll want to do it, because I hear so many people who they just want to be a better parent for their kids, because, again, they've put the kids before themselves. And it's normal. And I'm going to say it's normal and it's okay, because that's where they're at.
It's a great start.
But it is a good place. You've got to start where you are. And if that's where your beliefs and thoughts and feelings are at, then start there, because that's okay, because it's your journey. And in time, you'll see why you matter and have to come first. Just like when you get on an airplane and they say, if you're traveling with children, you've got to put your oxygen mask on first, right?
Yep.
Because we need to be able to fill up and breathe so we can take care of them. You've got to fill up your cup for you first, and give to others from that saucer, the overflow in the saucer. Because you can't be a good parent when you are empty on the inside. And we'll know this because that's when you lash out at your kids, right? You haven't slept, or your ex has pissed you off or something, and you're just empty, and it's like, rah, and you'll just regret it later on.
Yeah.
So if you've got to do it for the kids to start, then do it for them, because they do deserve to have, a parent who feels good and about themselves and is getting on with life. Because look at the example you're setting for them, because your kids learn from what you do, not what you say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they see you being resilient and getting up and getting on with life, and then showing them how to have a great relationship with yourself, because we're the longest relationship we're ever going to have.
Yeah.
You may as well love the living daylights out of you and honor you and do what's best for you, so you can show your children that, and then show them healthy relationship patterns in time. And that's part of just this building that resilience. It's all well and good hearing about being resilient, but the reality is you can't really learn resilience until you've been through something and know what it bloody feels like to come out the other side and look back and go, wow, I'm so proud of who I've become. Yeah. Because I wasn't this version of me probably even 6 months ago, even a couple of years ago. I'm very different, and I'm sure as shit a lot different from who I was 9 years ago, when I was feeling shattered and broken, when my marriage came crumbling down. And you do get to choose. You get to choose who you want to be. At any time within a relationship and out of it, you can choose to rebuild and live an amazing, and I say kick-ass life. Like, as you said before, I love my life. Love it. And
it's the best way to be.
Yeah. It's may as well, right?
Absolutely. And on that note, I think it could be time to say goodbye.
Yes.
So
yes. That's so
one thing that you like to leave people with today, what would that one thing be?
Oh, that's such a hard question. One thing.
Or top 3, if that's easier.
So the easiest way to, I suppose, move on or to look at things is, one, look at your whole life as a bit of a do homework on your life and look at it as from birth to now, and see, well, what are my patterns? What have I taken on from all those stressful, significant emotional events that have happened over my timeline? And do some reflection on yourself. And so you can own yourself of who you are and how you're showing up in relationships. And if you're looking to get into another one, if you're looking to get into another relationship, do the bloody work, get the lessons from the relationships, do it. But know that you are always worthy and deserving of a healthy, loving relationship. A relationship that is toxic, emotionally abusive, coercive and controlling, that is not love. No. And I know that some people need to know how to get out safely, but no matter what, if you're single, trying to get into a relationship, you are worthy, always worthy and deserving of love.
100%. And for me, when you go through that timeline of those significant emotional events, 90% of the time, the natural thing is to just pick out the shit ones. Then I would say go back through it all and pick out the good ones, because they will be there. And unless you look for them, you're never going to find them. Because when I did that with my coach, I think it was the second session, it's like, went through it and I'm like, no wonder I fucking hate my life. And it's like, yeah, well, what's the good stuff? Well, I kind of got that job and I got that girlfriend and yeah. What's the real good stuff? What's the stuff within you? I'm like, what? All the answers we need are deep inside ourselves, but we've got to have the courage to look. And I hear people say, oh, I don't want to do that because I don't like the vulnerability. Vulnerability is weakness. You feel vulnerable outside of your comfort zone. There is no way outside of your comfort zone without the courage to get out there. And there is no vulnerability within the comfort zone. So vulnerability is a strength. Vulnerability is courage. So whatever it takes, just frickin' do it. If you can't do it on your own, reach out for help.
Definitely.
So on that note, good morning, good night, good whatever it is.
Yes. And as you just said, I'm just going to leave with one more thing, if I may. It's like when it feels so bad, like when we're looking at what's wrong, equally available is what's right.
Yeah.
And what's good in you. And yes, it's now lunchtime here. Thank you so much for having me on your live and contributing to your audience. And yeah, enjoy your evening over there.
It's greatly appreciated. And I've seen quite a few love hearts and stuff flashing up, so it's all good.
Fabulous.
So on that note, we will say good night, goodbye, and yeah, bye for now.